Baseball Hall of Famer from Fox Sports and an Emmy Award winner. Congratulations on that, John Smoltz.
Well, thank you very much. And I want to say happy birthday to you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, John. Thank you.
Are you north of the Champions Tour?
Well, I'll answer it this way. I'm just a couple weeks apart from your booth mate on Fox. Joe Buck and I aren't too far apart. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does.
I have my AARP card, if that makes any. So, yes, I am north of the Champions line. Is that like the Mendoza line of life, pretty much?
You know, that was the, short of my big league career, wanting to pitch as long as I could, my next goal was literally to turn 50 so I could at least find out if I could play on the Champions Tour, right? That was the next goal. Got a chance, qualified, haven't been, really good lately. But, yeah, 50 was huge for me. So hopefully it's, going to be huge for you too.
Well, I appreciate that, John. Greatly appreciate that. Let's get into what's going on in baseball. What do you make of the MLB TSA checkpoints being set up for pitchers these days?
Yeah, a lot of things that happen in the game. I can only go back to when I was playing, and there was some abrupt changes that we had to deal with. And, at first you're like, this is a little bit much, but then it goes away and you're used to it. And I think the same will be said here. I mean, the optics, of course, are a lot different than anything we've ever seen, but there's layers to it that people forget that's kind of led up to this, right? 3 years ago, so much talk about the baseball. Pitchers were complaining about how slick it was, and they were getting blisters. And, of course, we were seeing balls come out of the park at an unbelievable rate and going farther than we've ever seen before. So that being the backdrop, time went on and certain things developed. Technology and science, obviously, is where it is. And through technology, you could then get your kind of visible look at what spin rate. We never talked about spin rate ever until recently in technology. So that has been kind of unearthed, some scenarios that when you look at the game today, people talk about what? Lowest batting average ever, most strikeouts. They talk about things that we typically have seen an increase over time. So long-winded answer, pitchers got to a point where to grip a baseball, throw a baseball, and know where it's going, this kind of evolved. Now, in spring training, there was a warning issued that this was coming. Now, whether or not anybody believed it was coming or not, that's why we're where we're at now. I think in 2 weeks it will be a non-issue. I think during this period you'll see the evidence of two things: confidence more for the hitters and a lesser rate of strikeouts and certainly more offense. So, is it the perfect scenario? Probably not, but it's something that everyone, at least at this time of the year, should not have to deal with that kind of stuff when you're talking about the summer, the grip and the heat and the sweat and the rosin that's available for you.
So,
but it has been a rule for a long time.
Exactly. It has been. It's been there for a long time, John, and it's just but it got out of hand. I think everyone can agree on that. You even hear Garrett Cole and Scherzer say, yeah, let's get Spider Tack out of the game, and you're hearing about clubhouse guys who put together like Coca-Cola and this concoction and that concoction, making their own special concoctions, and it got out of hand, and it was so obvious too that everyone could see it, and it was so blatant that something had to be done like this. But my problem is now it took all of 2 days for Girardi, who's a catcher, to call out Scherzer and have him checked in the middle of an inning because he's going to his head. And, anybody knows that, that Scherzer, who's in the Players Association, would be insane after being checked to do something with his hair, and in that he still does need something to go moisture with the rosin. Like, everyone knows that. And so, like, what are we doing? It's kind of out of control in that regard, John.
Yeah, I think that's going to be more isolated. And honestly, not having followed that situation or that game at that moment,
right.
There's probably a little bit of gamesmanship to try to throw off one of the best pitchers in the game. It didn't work, if that was one of the side effects of it. But, when I think about how this thing has developed and where we are with, like I said, some of the numbers, pitchers are not going to forget how to throw. Pitchers are not going to forget how to spin a baseball. Will it be at the kind of technology rate that we're seeing? Probably not. But, at the same time, hitters were not throwing a beef about the highest velocity ever in the game, making sure that they're not getting hit a lot.
Right.
But consequently, the hit batsman rate went way up, even though we had this kind of substance. So, look, I'm going to lean towards the pitchers 3 years ago. I haven't held a baseball in 9 years, thankfully, because when I do, my shoulder hurts. I don't want my shoulder to hurt. And so I got to trust that they felt 3 years ago the ball was definitely different than it is today. And I was, I remember the last game I pitched in regular season for the St. Louis Cardinals in Cincinnati. The ball was as slick. Wasn't rubbed up. I had no chance of being executing pitches. I kept telling the umpire, look, this is I don't want to hit anybody. I can't feel the baseball. I think I threw about 25 baseballs back in the course of my eventual grand slam and 7 runs that I gave up. We protested the game. Nothing came of it. I bring all that up because when that feeling happens to a pitcher, you're useless. There's nothing you can do. And so, to the degree of where we are today, everyone would agree it's been way too much technology and science taking it over the top. And that's why I think this won't be much to do about nothing once we get past this kind of, I guess you would say, interesting optics for the first week.
John Smoltz here on the Rich Eisen Show. Is there a substance that can be talked about, pitchers, management, get it all together, and that's put on the mound here, and that this is something that is just an approved concoction that allows hitters to feel like they're not going to get hit and pitchers feel like they can get a grip on the ball? I mean, and that fans can sit here and think that like when I'm watching Aroldis Chapman have trouble finding the strike zone last night and him just getting so angry and upset, and I'm sitting there thinking, is he angry and upset at himself, or is he angry and upset about the fact that he doesn't have any sort of feel on the baseball and he's angry at the situation? You know what I mean?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so, because not everybody has the same ability to sweat. Like I played with guys who sweat so much and it was cold, and then there's guys who's like for me, I had the driest hands in the world, and when it was warm, it was awesome. But when it was cold in Chicago, it was terrible. I had some of my worst games. So I hope we can get to that point. Look, I know we don't want to do copycat kind of stuff in the game. We want our game to be innovative and all that. But, I've always said the ball in Japan comes out of the package with some tacky, and there's no need. They have a different ball than we do. Forever, the umpires used to rub up the baseballs, and there was kind of no issues back then. Now it's subject to the home club, and the umpires don't rub up the baseball, and you got all those things and all those scenarios. I think people don't understand, though, how difficult it would be if you asked hitters, to go up to the plate with no gloves and no pine tar. I mean, yeah, it's a bat, and you're holding on to it, and you should be able to hit, but the feel's not there, and there would be no way they could hit at the rate when they have gloves and pine tar, which is okay for hitters. So your point's well taken, and hopefully there's that ability to not get this technical, scientific super edge. Nobody wants to be there. No one wants to have that edge realistically and morally to where it's such an unfair advantage. And I think the numbers kind of indicated where the game was going offensively, and to this point, you could say, hey, at least there's some light at the end of the tunnel of a little better balance, because God knows we don't want to move the mound back 2 feet. That would be the worst thing that ever happens. So this is a better compromise. And
then before we go here, John Smoltz, we are seeing 2 pitchers perform in a manner that is all-time.
Yep.
And deGrom being one, Jacob deGrom being one with the Mets, and how he is performing and how he throws and what gas he brings, as well as his ability to hit too. And then there's Ohtani, who is a unicorn. What are your thoughts on these 2 guys and what we can expect of them, not just this year but long term? What do you think? Yeah, I make no bones about it. I did Jacob deGrom's debut for MLB Network when he came up and faced the Yankees, and I've been known to make some kind of outrageous statements that don't, by the way, turn into too many outrageous statements. They end up being kind of in line with how I think, in my opinion. But I said he'd be the best pitcher the Mets have ever seen when he made his debut. That's how much I fell in love with a guy that I thought could mature into one of the best, and he is the most dominant pitcher that we've seen in maybe ever.
And so that being said, if he stays healthy, of course, the Mets are always in the conversation of, oh, you don't want to play the Mets if they get to the postseason and stay healthy. Having said that, I'm going to give you another outrageous statement about Ohtani. Ohtani is a special player that, I think everyone's rooting for, but the reality of how much longer can this not take away from each great talent that he has? I will say this about Ohtani. And again, when I saw him, come into the league, I didn't think he could stay healthy in the beginning because the task he was trying to pull off was monumental, and he needed time on both sides, both from a pitching side and from a hitting side. You combine the both, and he's had this super kind of freakish athlete that I hope we continue to see. But if all he did was pitch, he would be on the trails of a Jacob deGrom. He's that good. He has that kind of stuff, that he has wipeout, dominant, number one ace stuff, that's the Angels need that so bad. So hypothetically, if they got to the postseason and you had to pick and choose what's the greatest asset for that club, based on their pitching needs, the greatest asset for me is his pitching ability. He had no hitter stuff yesterday, but the ability to kind of hit and take away some energy from doing both at a high level, you could tell he was tired. You could tell he would be drained. And yes, offensively, he didn't do as well that game. But that's my point. Like, you have this unbelievable talent, but his arm, for me, is so unique that I don't know he'll be given the opportunity to reach that level because of the dual job that he enjoys doing, and they're showcasing.
Did you see his reaction to getting checked? He seemed to enjoy it. It was just like, okay, yeah. Him and deGrom too. They were like, okay, sure.
I think that's most of what everybody knows is coming. So, I'll be shocked if things come down and change and people go back to it, but you never know anymore. I was shocked we still have PED failures, but right. I like the direction of how everyone's handling it. We had an isolated situation that you talked about. I don't think we'll see many more of those. And, we're headed towards the All-Star game to showcase some incredible talent. But, man, Shohei, home run derby, right. The fact that you know how I feel. I think pitchers are the best athletes in the world anyways, Rich.
Yes,
so
I do.
We're just finally coming around to people getting a chance to see it.
And then before I let you go, while we're on the subject of the good stuff here, how pleasant and enjoyable and intense has the NL West turned into here? How fun is this?
Yeah, it sure
John?
has. Look, if I'm in that Giants locker room, I'm having the time of my life, having everybody in the world like myself talk about the Padres and the Dodgers.
Right.
And we're just kind of skidding along here under the radar. They've been fantastic. I really thought the West, before the year started, had a chance to get 2 wildcard teams. Didn't know what that would be based on the bottom half of the West. Mm-hmm. Typically is not and wasn't going to be. Let's just face it, Arizona's having a rough year and Colorado's in transition. So it's going to be a fun – we keep calling it a 2-headed race, but, man, great job in San Francisco for not just caving to what everybody thought about your ball club being old and not having a chance. And, by the way, you just got the best record in the National League, so kudos to the Giants and Gabe Kapler.
And I just love the gamers that the Padres are, too. And full disclosure, I'm having Jake Cronenworth on tomorrow, not only because he's a hot hitter – but you know why I'm having him on tomorrow.
Yeah, Mr. Wolverine, I hear you.
I knew you'd get a kick out of that. John, congrats again on the Emmy Award. It is so deserved. You make me smarter every time I listen to you and Buck, and then obviously you with MLB and calling into the show. That's a fact. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
You got it. Right back at you. That's John Smoltz, Baseball Hall of Famer, Emmy-winning broadcaster, and also Michigan Stater. Right there. He's a big Michigan State guy. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.